Hey gang, your old pal Clay here, Mountain Music Exchange, and today we're going to talk about a few guitar hacks that cost nothing to keep you in the gig or in a jam session, so let's get started. Alright, so I'm going to preface this by saying, there was a time when I was a kid, and probably well farther into my adulthood than I will ever care to admit, that I was on an extremely limited budget when it came to guitar. For years and years, I didn't have strap locks. I did not have some of the basic things that most folks use, especially gigging guitar players or recording session players, or even just jamming with your friends. Most people nowadays have these sorts of things, but when I was a kid, I did not. So I hope that this video gives you a little bit of enlightenment as to some things you can do if you have no more money to spend on your guitar and you need to upgrade or stay in the gig, anything like that. If you like this video, I hope you'd consider giving us a like and a subscribe. And so without further ado, let's get started. All right, so for our first hack, we're gonna use washers, basic washers that you might find in a toolbox around your house or at a hardware store for very, very cheap. We're gonna make ourselves some strap locks. Me and my buddy did this. We played in a band when we were in school. We did this religiously. We swore by the idea of using washers as strap locks for whatever reason. When you're 15, you've got no money, you do what you can. So to start, what you'll need is a basic washer. Now you will need to make sure that it fits the strap button. If it doesn't, you can still use it, but it may not be the most preferable situation. Quick disclaimer, these are all relatively temporary hacks. These will not be permanent fixes or permanent adjustments that you may want to make to your guitar, with the exception of a couple, which we'll talk about. But essentially, if you could take your guitar to a repair tech to have these sorts of things done, or you can get strap locks and you're adept at installing them, or any of the other fixes that we talk about today, we always recommend taking your guitar to a professional. However, if you're working with no budget, that may not always be an option. So again, these will get you through the gig, through the session, whatever. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove our strap button using just a basic screwdriver. Now, if you have a drill, that will probably expedite what you're doing here for various reasons, but a screwdriver will work just fine if that's what you have laying around. So now that we've got our strap button removed, what we're gonna do is remove the felt from the strap button. We're gonna do that very gently. Sometimes that felt can break, especially if it's aged a little bit. And we're gonna take our basic washer, we're gonna slip that on over. And the reason I say take the felt off is you're gonna wanna have a barrier between the washer and your guitar so as to minimize any potential damage that you might do. All right, so for the example I'm gonna do here, this works better, by the way, if the washer is big enough to go over the body side of your strap button. But again, this will work. But it works better if it's able to go over the body side of the strap button and then sort of just as the strap button sort of comes up, sort of meet there. But again, it's fine if it doesn't. So I'm gonna use this old Ace strap. This also works better if you have a thinner layer of leather or whatever the material is that hooks to your strap button. You're actually going to want to take the front part of your strap and connect that over to the back side of the washer, leaving your strap button on top of the washer with the strap underneath. So I'm going to add your felt back in. Works much better in this scenario if it's a thinner layer of felt, but again, it will still work. And then as you have all of that assembled, just connect it back to the guitar. Just screw that back in. Again, a drill will expedite the process, but a screwdriver will work just fine. Get that good and tight. I'm gonna bring that around, and voila! You now have a locked in place strap. Again, I would not recommend this as a permanent fixture on your guitar, but in a temporary spot, it will absolutely do the trick. It has got me through more gigs than I care to admit. Okay, so hack number 2, you have a strap button and a strap button screw that has come loose on you for whatever reason. This happened to me at a gig one time with a Les Paul, and it was terrible. I had to quickly kneel down and finish playing the song, and then luckily my buddy came by and told me that he had a toothpick. And I was like, that's not gonna fix this. And he was like, oh yeah, it's for sure gonna fix it. So, let me show you how. First of all, you've got a loose strap button here. can't get that screw to stay in just right. It's going to keep coming loose. It could potentially fall out on us. And when this happened to me, that was in a Les Paul, by the way, and it was on the upper bout, which is the worst possible place for a Les Paul to lose the strap. Luckily, we managed to save it. What you'll do is you'll take a toothpick, just a regular run-of-the-mill wooden toothpick, mint if you prefer, and you'll put that down in the area where the strap button was. You'll sort of take your finger and place it right up against the top where it sticks out and just break it off. You can see that there. And what this will do is as you put your strap button back in, it will fill in any of the empty space that has been created over time through rattling, etc. And again, a drill will expedite this process, but a screwdriver will work just fine. And this will actually create probably a tighter hold, so it may be a little bit more difficult to screw back in if you're using a screwdriver, but it will fill in all the gaps that have been generated over time. And now you have a perfectly usable, once again, strap button. Now, I will say that I have used this hack more times than I care to admit on guitars that are probably worthy of better treatment as far as should I have taken it to a professional? Sure. But it has worked and held up over the years. But again, I will always recommend taking that guitar to a professional if you can, and just let this get you through maybe a gig or a session until you're able to do that. For our third hack, everyone that's played guitar for a long enough period of time or played a variety of different guitars has encountered tuning stability issues. A lot of tuning stability issues actually come from the nut of the guitar, not necessarily from another factor. It's not necessarily the tuning pegs. It's not necessarily the bridge, although those are factors that can come into the equation. Typically, it's the nut. And the reason why is the nut will get burrs or things, you know, that will sort of bind the string, or perhaps it's not cut just right for the size string that you're using. So with this hack, what we're gonna do is we're gonna allow for a little bit of sort of freer movement within the nut slot here, just underneath your headstock, by using a mechanical pencil. So with a mechanical pencil, what we're gonna do is get just a little bit of it going here. We're gonna actually get into the slot and we're gonna fill that slot up as best we can. Now, some slots may be a little tougher than others because, you know, they are typically cut for, you know, lower to higher strings. So they may be a little thinner. You may have to do a little bit more work, but what we're gonna wanna try to do here is we're gonna get as much of that slot filled in with graphite as we possibly can. And that's the sides, bottom, etc. And what this is gonna do is this is graphite. Now, if you're familiar with a graphite nut, for example, you'll kind of see where this is going, is this gives you sort of a temporary barrier in between the string and the actual nut material, while not really doing anything to impede or prevent being able to play. And it also provides a sort of, we'll say lubrication, but it's not necessarily that. It just provides a barrier so that the string can glide through easier. So if you're doing bends, you'll be able to kind of glide in and out as the string goes back and forth through the nut. You'll have a little bit of a barrier there to keep you smooth as it travels back and forth in that slot. Pretty easy, not too bad. And then of course you can also take your guitar to a professional, have the nut filed out appropriately, smoothed out, etc. But again, this will get you where you need to be for the rest of the night anyway. Okay, so this next hack isn't necessarily a temporary hack. It's just something that I've noticed over the years that has helped me. I'm not even 100% sure that this is actually how tuning machines work, but at least in my head it is. If you happen to know otherwise or have any information, please feel free to let me know in the comments below whether I'm wrong, right, etc. But what we're going to do essentially here is we are going to take these tuning pegs. They have screws in the top that take the peg into the machine. Now these screws on these are 4-way Phillips head screws. Now sometimes it may be a flathead. In certain cases, like Gibson tulip tuners or button tuners or vintage style Fender tuners, you're not going to have that, so that's not an option. But on modern Fender tuners, Grover tuners, etc. This is totally a thing you can do. And what it is you're just going to take your screwdriver and you are going to just tighten down. You're going to hold. Your guitar will go out of tune doing this, so retuning will be a necessity. But you're going to hold the tuning peg between your fingers, your thumb and index finger. You're going to just tighten down that screw. And you will notice immediately that the travel in the tuning peg becomes a little more difficult. Not necessarily in a bad way. You can just tell that it's tighter. What I've gathered from this, or what I've noticed in my own personal experience, is that this has seemed to help with tuning stability. Totally free, not necessarily something you have to go to a professional later for, just a little hack that'll keep your guitar in tune a little bit better than it was before. Okay, so for our last hack, this is not necessarily going to be anything that you have to go to a professional with regards to either. This one is simply just a matter of preference. If you're a Strat player and you don't necessarily love the springy sound of the Strat that echoes, there's a quick and easy fix for that a lot of guitar players have used over the years. So really this is more just making you aware of something that, again, shouldn't cost anything. You can use with this, I usually use foam. I've found that that provides sort of a sound deadener and a better barrier. But you can use almost anything. You can use cardboard, you can use Amazon mailers. I mean, I've seen people use all kinds of things. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a thin layer of foam, and we are going to cut that foam to fit inside of the spring route on a Stratocaster style guitar. All right, so what we're gonna do with that, we're gonna take a pair of scissors and we're gonna sort of mark where we need to cut. So I'm gonna mark here. Now what I usually do with this and what I recommend doing is matching up a corner, at least any one corner. So I'm gonna match up the right corner here, and then I'm gonna take my scissors and cut at the left corner. Now I'm gonna follow the length down here that I want this to run, and I'm gonna cut a length here as well. Now, all you have to do is just cut the foam out until the two X and Y axis cuts that you've made intersect. Now with this, you can probably use a knife as well. It may be just as quick, if not a little quicker. But again, in the spirit of having a standard household item around the house that you can use, we went with scissors. Now we have our routed foam. We're gonna just put that in the back, just over the springs. If you want something that you can leave in, for example, and still restring your guitar, you may consider cutting just before the tremolo block. Some people think that's part of the Strat sound, and as do I, but at certain times, depending on the model, depending on the springs or the amount of springs you're using, it could become troublesome, especially if you're recording and you want to keep any sort of reverberating sound to your amp, your DAW, anything like that, a effect pedal. And then as you put the back plate on, it will sort of tension that foam down to the springs. Okay, gang, that's gonna have us on this one. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope you found the information useful. Thank you all a ton for watching. You can always check out parts and accessories online at mountainmusicexchange.com. You can check out other videos from us here on YouTube as well as TikTok. And you can also check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Gang, that's gonna have us on this one. I really appreciate you all. I'm Clay, and now you can keep rocking. Thank you a ton.